Little of this was shown on the majority TV networks in Britain and America. That the Americans met courageous resistance was not news at all. Viewers did not get a sense of the sheer scale of the suffering of ordinary people. This remarkable film from inside Fallujah was made by an American, Mark Manning, with Rana al-Ayyubi, an Iraqi. It has never been shown on television. In the wars of today, it's often daring, independent filmmakers like these who give the victims a voice.
من هاي الباب؟
من هذا الباب ثلاثة، ظليت أمشي وراه، إن جاء واحد أخذ قاعدة من هنا. أنا كل قوتي وخر صفا. كل قوتي فكيت الباب.
نعم.
فشفته نايم. الدم يسفح من فانيلته. واحد واقف هنا هذا أمريكي. ودوه هنا يا
أدوه؟
هنا وقفنا.
11 طاولة. هذيك وحدة. هذيك.
American journalist Dar Jamal also entered Fallujah independently and revealed that the Americans had used white phosphorus and attacked civilians. His eyewitness dispatches and photographs contradicted the version many people saw and read, but were not published in the mainstream media.
I have photos of trenches being dug, and I watched them burying people there and put little makeshift gravestones, writing anything to try to identify the people. And I walked the rows of these stones after the April siege with one of my interpreters while she read old man in tracksuit with a key in his hand, mother and 2 children. These were the identifying markers, and these are clearly civilians.
What does embedding do to journalists themselves?
An important distinction between embedded journalists and independent journalists is that when you choose to embed, you're giving the military the full power to control where you go, how you get there, what you see, and when you see it, and in a lot of instances, even how you're going to report that.
Hundreds of thousands of people were forced to evacuate the city, refugees in their own land. They were given nowhere to go. Many are still unable to return.
يعني ما يصير هيك يعني الحكومة شلون تقبل يعني يطلعون ذول المجاهدين ويقولون هاي إرهاب وليش مو إخوانك ما يقولون على الحكومة على هذول الكفرة اللي جم قدروا من العراق ما يقولون لهم ليش هالعمل هذا ليش مو الله ما يقبلها.
لا عدوان لا عدوان.
Evidence that the invaders had terrorized civilians was provided by Al Jazeera and other Arab TV networks, whose fearless, unembedded reporters and camera crews became a threat to military propaganda. They gave voice to people who refused to be portrayed simply as victims.
تفضل يا بوش شوف هذه المآسي ترضى بهيجي انت ترضى بهيجي ظلم انت اكو عندك انسانيه اذا عندك انسانيه تقدر تشوف طفله وهي تصيح ماما بابا وين الانسانيه وين الضمير.
I happen to be, I think, the only journalist in the world that has seen the bombing of Al Jazeera Arabic's bureaus in both Kabul in 2001 and in Baghdad in 2003. The case of the bombing of the Al Jazeera office in Kabul was, without doubt and categorically, a direct targeting of those journalists to shut them up and possibly kill them.
Al Jazeera had informed Washington.
Every news organization provides Western military commanders with exact coordinates of where their journalists hide. But the point about the bombing of the Al Jazeera Arabic office in Kabul was that they were given a warning to get out. So that was a clear targeting of a journalistic organization and personnel to get them off the air.
Journalists who refused to go along with the military are often those who report the real news. In August 1945, a public relations spectacle was staged on the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, in which General Douglas MacArthur ostentatiously took the surrender of the Japanese. The embedded media were told to attend.
Cameramen and reporters of many countries record this historic moment.
An Australian reporter, Wilfred Burchett of the London Daily Express, refused and set out on a perilous journey for the ruins of Hiroshima. The official truth of the atomic bombing was presented in this New York Times report, which claimed that radiation sickness did not exist. The reporter who wrote the story was later revealed to have been secretly on the payroll of the US War Department. Burchett's historic scoop had exposed the lie. There was, he reported, an atomic plague. I interviewed Wilfred Burchett in 1983, shortly before he died.
Because it was, I think as I described it, it was like a city, not a bomb city, it was like a city which steamrollers just flattened everything out of existence. What I was seeing there, and this feeling sort of grew into me as I walked around and I looked at people, that here, this is the last minute, what happened in the last minute of World War II, but it would be the fate of cities all over the world in the first hours of a World War III.
What happened to you personally in Japan after that was published?
I went back to Tokyo by train and arrived just as there was a press conference being held to deny my story, because the official line was that there was no such thing as atomic radiation. And that denial of that story has gone on for decades. It's more or less still going on.
The media consensus was that the atomic bombs had brought the war to an end, but official files told another story.